Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix, and welcome to Yacc, yet another Crowcast where I pick a game, I play it for a week, and then I'll talk about it. This week's game is Rooten. It was released in 2002, and it's an indie horror game, developed by Style Limited, published by Amortis, which I figure is just one guy called Andre Amortis. But anyway, there will be spoilers up ahead, just so you know. But first, a little backstory. This game looked like a Lovecraftian nightmare, which I like, by the way. So I normally don't play horror games, but sometimes you gotta try something different. So as you start up a new game, you can pick new game, continue cycle, and options. And there are not a lot of options to tweak. And I'll get into what the cycle actually means at the end of the episode. But so you get this job. You're supposed to head to a research facility out in the forest where you're supposed to meet this researcher, Catherine. She's a mycologist. Basically, she deals with mushrooms, and you're there to investigate these strange mushrooms and get a sample, and you fly there via helicopter. You're supposed to report every day on what you find. So this game is broken down into a couple of days of play. So you start with day one, you arrive, there's a dark, foggy forest. And the strange thing about this is that the research station is actually abandoned. So you explore a bit and you find this dead dog, which has died for some strange reason, and then you find a sign, and these signs basically show a map of the area, so it's used to teleport back to the research camp. And later in the game, white circles or other areas will be uncovered. So basically from day to day, you're supposed to do something new, explore, find something, and that's the whole gist of the game. So on the first day, you go around finding like mushrooms, strange mushrooms, and cocoons. And this game has this thing where you investigate an object, like there's a question mark that pops up and you get a text prompt. And I'm not sure about this because the developers were Russian, and I think they just put the text from Russian into Google Translate and just translate it right over. Because if it were written better, like from an author or something, it would have more twist and more elegant language, if that makes sense. Google Translate can butcher so much things if you just translate right over. So you go throughout and explore the forest, and until it gets dark, and you put up your flashlight and start to investigate. And this is where this game really shines, because walking around in the dark, the gameplay tricks on you, because there's a lot of play with shadows and lights at the end. And at the end of the game, or the end of the first day, I should say, you end up in the safe house where you're supposed to report on what happened throughout the day. But not for long, there's a knocking on the door, and a strange guy is outside asking for salt for some reason. He's part of the research team, and it's the first person that you see in the game. He's called Igor, and apparently there are other couple of people out in the woods that you haven't seen yet, called Dima, Katie, and Alex. And Katie or Catherine, it's kind of convoluted, but she's the one that you need to talk to, basically. So you'll find them out in the woods during the progression of the game. So on the second day, I went to check on the dog again, and this time there were some weird outgrowths. But if you think about it, if the whole forest is infested by these mushrooms, and mushrooms have these underground layout, how they grow, so everything underneath the forest is about to bloom and get out. And this is what the cycle is about. This has happened before, and it will happen again, and the forest has a way of bringing back things. It's really weird, but also kind of creepy, as I said, like a Lovecraftian story. So the whole point of this day, looking at the map, you're supposed to find a hatchet, and it's used for defense, but you can more or less outrun any kind of enemy in the game. So in the beginning of the game, you are introduced to these tree-like constructs that will chase you, and then later in the game there will be these like spider dogs, if that makes sense, that will chase you. And throughout the game you'll also find these people that had turned into trees. They look like trees anyway. So at the end of the day, you report in, and apparently you have some problems with your legs, and your character looks more rough for wear when he walks. He actually limps. So he has some problems with the legs, and that's part of the whole cycle as well. So after the report is done, Dima, this other character, knocks on the door, and he looks worse for wear. He's been infected by the mushrooms. So you talk to him, and you basically leave him to his devices. So on day 3, there are more strange growths, and I checked up on the dog again, and this time you get the option to pet it. And it's so weird, you pet it, and it's part of like a thing that happened later on in the game. And you can play this game either continuing the cycle or not. There are a couple of choices that characters will give you. You can eat some meat later on in the game, you can refuse to, and it's really weird and disgusting. So the plan for the day was to head for the radio tower to find a way out of this place. But not for long, someone else knocks on your door and there's this weird looking slender man character with tiny pupils, really creepy. And he talks about the cycle and stuff, as far as I remember. And it's really airy and weird because the main character, I would be shocked. I would put an axe into his head any day if I were the main character, because this is not normal. So on the fourth day, I checked up on the dog again and more strange things has grown out of it. And across the river, there's like a river part at the beginning of the game, which is basically how you, progress. And you can find shortcuts later on in the game so you don't have to cross this bridge. But in the background, I saw a healthy version of myself looking at me. So this forest is playing tricks on you, by the way. And the character that you play is looking even worse for wear now. He's having like strange, have these sacs under his eyes and he's limping even more. And he's got this growth going on to him. So he's clearly infected. So the forest is even stranger now. And I managed to find Kate, one of the main researchers of this mushroom. So she is turned into a tree. Pure Lovecraftian style. She's actually part of the tree and she has these weird kind of tentacle outgrowths, and she explains about the cycle, and you just want to escape this place, so you're out to find the radio tower. Oh yeah, and there was this other thing that was tied to a trophy that I forgot about. But you walk into this clearing and you find an infected dead bear. Well, you think it's dead, but on your way back he actually comes back alive and he hits real hard. There's actually an achievement tied to this where if you take down the bear, you get a trophy for it. There's even another trophy where if you complete a cycle without using the hatch, you get an achievement. So if you don't use the axe, good for you, because you don't need it, apparently. So on day 5, you wake up to the other visitors outside eating Katie's body. And this is part of the cycle. You can choose to eat the meat or you can choose to get to the radio tower. So that's what I did. There's this long walk. You get to the radio tower and the radio is smashed. So you're more or less stuck in this forest. At the beginning of the game, I think your boss told you that the helicopter would arrive within a week or something, but it's too late for that now. So on day 6, the dog is alive again, and it's turned into these bright glowing things that follow around you in the forest. And I didn't get long into the game before I was killed by a bear, and then I woke up. And then it was day 7, and now you're supposed to go to the helipad to get picked up. But when you get there, there's another version of you. This is about the cycle, which is kind of weird because the way I see it, it's a horror game and the forest kind of gives birth to the main character and it's like a cycle, and the others as well get rebirth. So I think you can break the cycle some way by changing your choices throughout the game, but I'm not quite sure. So it ends up with you dying, becoming part of the soil and the ground and the mushroom seeds, and the cycle continues. It's a brilliant concept, but it's poorly performed. So anyway, that's more or less how the game ends. So gameplay: explore the strange forest and find out what's going on. Control: the X button interacts with things. You get a little question mark and then you know that you can interact with that person, object, or thing. The square button uses the hatches, and the options menu brings up the options, the little ones you have. You can change from English to Russian, and there are some sliders for volume, but nothing more than that. And the left stick moves the character around on screen. Graphics: this game was made in the Unity engine and the artist was Jana Lusenko. And the game is basically a 3D render world with 2D assets such as the characters, the enemies, the trees and bushes. And it's an interesting concept, but it looks kind of out of place. It's the way to describe it. It looks like an early Flash game, not that polished. Sound and music: Valentino Parcamento made the music for this game, and as far as I know, it's the only title screen that actually has music, and that's about it. Easter eggs, secrets, and glitches. So I played this game in 2 phases. One was just exploring, and the other one was actually for the podcast when I took notes and stuff. So during my early test play of the game, I got stuck in an area which I was not supposed to be. I was going to grab the hatches, and I was like, okay, what if I try to walk along this ledge, and I got stuck in the trees and I couldn't get back, so that was a harder set. And then there's this other part with the radio tower that I'm not think you're supposed to do, but the way I did it was there's this bear, and I know that the bear hit me hard, so I pushed against an edge, if that makes sense, and I got up on a higher ledge so I could drop down on the bridge so I could avoid that encounter altogether. Yet again, I don't think you're supposed to do it this way, but that's the way I did it. In conclusion, I wrote no, unfortunately not. This game has some really good ideas, but but somehow it doesn't deliver. So there are some creepy visuals and some interesting aspects to the game, but yet again it doesn't deliver. So it looks like an early Flash game and it plays like one. So maybe if they had like a narration to go with the text and everything, because it's kind of bland, but I guess since it's an indie game and they didn't have a budget or whatever. It was also very hard to find out anything about this gaming company at all. I have to do a lot of digging, and the only reason I know about who made the game and, you know, the developers in general, like music and artists, was that I completed the game. I got the end credits. It doesn't even have like a wiki page like usual games have. And the page for the main game was like this weird looking sketchy website, and PSN and even Steam didn't give that much information. It was even hard to get like the name of the companies out to get it was just a mess. So I'm sorry, go play something else instead. It had some good ideas, but it didn't deliver. So anyway, thanks for listening and or watching, and take care.